While US President Joe Biden refuted claims that a Chinese spy balloon was just that, this week also saw Biden deliver his State of the Union address, and with the shifting of the deck chairs in Congress, Kevin McCarthy, the new Speaker of the House and replacement to the controversial Nancy Pelosi, is now the holder of the gavel. We've also seen overseas rescue teams begin deploying in Turkey after a pair of powerful earthquakes have killed more than 7,000 people, with the toll rising throughout Turkey and Syria. And of course, join us once again to discuss this is our North American and European correspondent all the way from Canada, Michael O'Shabon. Welcome, Michael.
Hi, Michael. How are you today? Everything good?
Good, thanks, mate. Now, the State of the Union and the spy balloon, all over the news here. How's it being reported over there?
So I'm going to start with the spy balloon because I think this is a really important situation. On Saturday, January the 28th, at 60,000 feet, between 60 and 65,000 feet. Now consider that regular airlines fly between 30 and 42,000 feet. NORAD, which is the North American Aerospace Defense Command, they realized that there was an unidentified balloon that was entering the continental area of Alaska. This thing was 220 feet tall, taller than the Statue of Liberty, and the size of 2 or 3 buses. It entered Alaska and hovered over Canada. Then it went on to Idaho over sensitive U.S. military sites. Then, you ready for this? It flew to Montana. In Montana is where Malmstrom Air Force Base is, where 150 intercontinental ballistic missile silos are located. Then it went to a military installation in Nebraska called Offutt, which is the Air Force's base of the Strategic Air Command in charge of nuclear forces. And finally, it went over Whitney Air Force Base, which operates the Air Force's B-2 bombers. Now, imagine that this thing is flying unfettered over those military situations. Excuse me, it took 5 days to Wednesday, February the 1st, as the world watches, 2 F-22 fighter jets shot this puppy down. They used an AIM-9X Sidewinder missile, one missile. The missile costs about $604,000 and weighs about 188 pounds. They shot the thing down on the East Coast, just near South Carolina, so that it still remained in the nautical border of the United States. Otherwise, it would have been shot in international waters, and then there would have been big problems. But guess what they found in the balloon, Michael? They found electrical and optical sensors, digital cameras with collective and transmission capabilities. Basically, what's been discovered and released now is that the Chinese are conducting a massive global surveillance program. And they've been doing this for over, 4 or 5 years, over 5 continents. It's launched from Hainan, which is in the southern part of China there. And China actually claimed that they owned the balloon, but they said, oh, it was a meteorological craft, and then it went astray. I mean, Anthony Blinken even canceled his trip to China. And some people say, why didn't the U.S. shoot this down earlier? Well, it was leaked today out of the Pentagon. Well, sometimes you like to observe a thief while he's doing his thing, so you can learn more about what he's doing before you arrest him. But there's been other balloons, Michael. And there's balloons that have been flown over South Florida, Hawaii, Japan, India, Vietnam, Taiwan, and the Philippines. And last week in Costa Rica. Flying these balloons. The Pentagon budget in the United States is just a mere $859 billion. And they couldn't shoot that puppy down in Montana over a mountainous region, I should say. But here's something even more finally on this balloon scenario. China is the second largest purchaser of land in the United States. Second largest. You know who the first is? Canadians. China is the first. They have a massive portion of the global chip manufacturing, so they're holding car manufacturers and all kinds of electrical and machinery at bay. They have massive intellectual property theft and corporate theft, still unfettered. They have a huge portion of America's $31 trillion debt. Chinese police stations have been popping up in Manhattan and certain other cities in the world, and basically influencing Chinese nationals. And finally, Huawei and TikTok for data collection. I'm telling you, people got to start to get really serious about this, because China is trying to take over the world. I mean, it's scary. I mean, what do you think Australia would do if they flew a balloon over top of Sydney?
Michael, we've just had reporting just today that the security cameras within our Parliament House are connected to the Chinese network. That the cameras in there. Our Department of Defense, Parliament House are all banned. The cameras that are in there are banned in other countries, America, England, because of the connection to the Chinese Communist Party. And so, we aren't anyone to be looking to for advice.
I'm telling you, it's just terrible. And that, of course, weighed on the State of the Union. So, I mean, goodness, it's...
Yeah. I noticed in the State of the Union, McCarthy trying to shush some of the Republicans. Are the Republicans going to be able to unite? Because McCarthy was pretty much ignored. There seems to be a big divide within the Republican Party. Are they going to be able to unite behind one candidate if it's not Donald Trump?
That's a very loaded question. Let's just deal with the State of the Union first, and then we'll go to election. First of all, it was the 118th Congress that was there. And this was the first time that McCarthy was there, as you said, as a Speaker of the House with a gavel. And the one decent thing he didn't do that Nancy Pelosi did, he didn't rip up the script that the president was speaking of. And generally, the State of the Union is the biggest platform for the president. It's a bully pulpit. This is the second time that he's given one. And basically, he was talking about speaking to the people who feel invisible. But some people have said that the middle class in the United States has been forced to be the working poor, and they've been pushed down. And that the people who are already the working poor are not able to survive and now are thrown onto the streets. So it's been a dire situation in America. But the objective of the president is to paint a really bright picture. And many believe that this was a precursor to him announcing that he's going to run in the election. And as you pointed out, there was lots of heckling that went on, because the problem was some of the things that Biden was saying were untrue. I mean, there was real-time stat checkers who were there and basically evaluating some of the things that he was saying and reporting that it was false. The Biden administration started off basically with a catastrophic retreat of Afghanistan. So he didn't show as being a very strong leader. Currently, Reuters puts Biden at 41% popularity. And this is a stat that's even worse. Between 62 and 65% of Democrats don't want him to run. And when Biden took office, inflation was at 1.4%. Today, it's at 7%. When Biden took office, mortgage rate was at 2.4% in the United States. Now it's 6.5%. Gas, natural gas, has doubled in price. Diesel fuel doubled in price. Groceries are up 20%. Gasoline is 40% higher, and there's 5 million illegals who invaded the United States through an open border, and 70,000 Americans died of fentanyl. Crime is going up. Homelessness is at an all-time high. Carjacking, cashless bail. Cities are being unlivable and unsafe. And now China is starting to do their thing. He didn't show any strength when a foreign spacecraft impeded sovereign air. The debt ceiling is going up, and basically there's going to be a whole kerfuffle about that, but it's pushing over $31 trillion. There's a bombshell report going to come out very soon about the Hunter laptop because of all the interconnections that the Biden family had with that. And now the New York Times is actually taking shots at Vice President Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. And you know that the ship is sinking when the New York Times starts to do it. But Biden, I think, still believes that he's going to run. And one of the things that he said 19 times in his speech was, let's get the job done. Let's finish the job. I mean, he did give some hints that he was going to raise some money for the teachers. He was going to tax the rich, millions and billions of dollars of funding and small business funding. But it's just not looking good. And I just can't see how the Democratic Party could throw their support behind him. He's pretty much a lame duck. And when you look at the contrast, Sarah Huckabee Sanders was the Republican representative who gave the rebuttal. She's the Arkansas governor. She's a former press secretary for Donald Trump. Her father was, I believe, the governor or the one of the senators for the same Arkansas. She said that she was the youngest governor at 40 and a female, and Biden was the oldest president for a party that doesn't want him to run. So I think there's going to be some serious shaking, rattling, and rolling. It is election season. I don't know if Biden will actually run. Kamala Harris's numbers are even worse. And I don't know if America has an appetite for the circus of Donald Trump again. I think many of the things that he put forth, many of the policies were good and were standard bearers for the Republicans. But I think the Republican Party has slightly moved on. I still believe that Ron DeSantis and Christine Noem is the ticket that would win for the Republicans, because what Ron DeSantis has done and exhibited in the way that he's run Florida is something that the United States and many Republicans can look for. And I think there's going to be one heck of a leadership convention. And if Donald Trump starts to throw mud and start being silly, everybody's going to evacuate him. He's going to get his ego served up to him. I think he'd be much better just to say that he's not going to run and be the kingpin and behind the scenes and get a governorship or a senateship instead. Because if Biden thinks that he's going to run at 82 years old when he can't figure out how to get off a stage at times, and the way the country's being run and ignoring the southern border, I just don't see it. I just don't see it.
Yeah, looking from afar, Michael, when we see a country of 330 million people and a man of Biden's, and I'm not being ageist here, but you really think surely there must be other choices for the Democratic Party.
Let's just call it the way it is. The man is getting old, and there's nothing wrong. We're all going to get old. But every so often, you got to make a call, and you got to say, the pressures, the cognitivity, the leadership skills, and just the strain on one has to be great.
Yeah,
and
it's a high-pressure job.
It's not a 9-to-5, and you got to make decisions. And sometimes you really wonder who the hell is running that gig in the White House, because sometimes you listen to him speak and you listen to him tell stories about someone doing this and someone doing that, and commentators are going, well, that's just a flagrant lie. He never did that. That person did that. It's kind of like,
yeah.
I mean, it's sad in a way. I mean, why would his family let it get to that?
Yeah.
And why would they ever let him entertain the fact that he thinks he's going to run again? I mean, it's sad. But the Democrats, they think they're doing a good job, and the rest of America doesn't. I mean, you got bookends, don't forget. That's the way America is built, right? California and New York, that's your Democrats, and everybody in the center. And what's going to happen is when all these 5 million illegals find out that a Republican government is going to take place, and they're going to start deporting all these puppies because they're not making their claims, where are they going to go? They're going to go to sanctuary cities, which is New York and California. California can't afford the tax base as it is because everybody with money is leaving. Yeah. And they're talking about having a rich tax. I mean, it's going to be a catastrophe. You can't go to California. Nobody's going to visit New York. I mean, why? Because it's crime. There's drugs. There's people living in train stations. There's carjackings. There's no cash bail. Nobody wants to go. That's a reality.
Yeah. I mean, all right. Let's move on to the horrific scenes that coming out of Turkey and Syria. I think the latest reports are over 700,000 confirmed dead, over 100,000 missing. We've seen aid from 70 countries going in there. It's the height of winter. It just could not be worse for this poor region and poor people.
So it's 12,000 people are reported dead at this point. 12,000. It was in a 4 million populated area between Syria and that. It was a 7.8 earthquake. They estimate the death toll could go up to as much as 20,000 people, and it's increasing. The problem is that if you go over the 3-day limit, anybody who is trapped, just food, water, etc., it's becoming a very disparaging and sad scenario. Right now, the weather is freezing, it's snowing, it's raining. Many of the structures fell hours after the earthquake, and some earth aftershocks. There are problems with consistency and construction codes, and I don't know if you've seen it on your news in Australia, buildings toppling down behind them. Syria is even in a worse state. Here, Syria has been at war for 13 years, and they've got like 4 million refugees all over the place. You can't get anywhere. There are villages and areas in Syria which are cut off that have no aid, will not get any aid because of the civil unrest. Turkey has that exact same problem. Many of the major roads that link some of the cities is absolutely destroyed. They don't have a very classic infrastructure that Australia or Canada, the United States would respect. So it's very hard. The white helmets are there. They're trying to do the best they can. I mean, the world has come to their relief. There's been 24 international flight release. There's been just over 90 civilian passenger airplanes which have gone with detector dogs and many people from around the world. But the worst thing is when they stand on top of a collapsed building in a collapsed scenario and they go like this and everybody keeps quiet. The construction vehicles shut down. Everything is absolutely quiet because they're trying to hear if they can hear people tapping or crying. Yeah. You know, I'm a claustrophobic person. Although I dived, I always could see the top. I can never dive in caves. I'm a little claustrophobic. I just can't imagine being trapped underneath the building. I mean, there was buildings where 90, 100 people were in, and you saw the building come down. And no building should come down like that. No building should come down like that. And it's catastrophic, and it's going to be worse. I mean, they said they think it's going to be 20,000. It's going to be much more than that. They're not going to want to report that because the Turkish government doesn't want to, report bad things. But they're having a real problem, and the unfortunate reality is that the amount of devastation that has taken place and the amount of equipment that is there, and even if all these rescue people and other white helmets and people from around the world come in and give aid, you're still not going to save these people. And there's going to be other buildings that are going to fall. I mean, it's catastrophic. God bless where we live. We are so fortunate, so fortunate.
And the situation in Syria was also compounded by Assad. How do you get in there safely? Is Assad going to guarantee the safety of those going in to help? And can he guarantee the safety?
Well, they've been in wars. It's been a civil war there for 13 years. I mean, this is the same place where they had gas. Remember, where they had that mustard gas, where killing people. I mean, there's not people are going to be rushing into there because there's no safety. You don't know who's who or where's where. It's not like they're wearing military flak jackets, or they have, at least the Ukrainians have the yellow and the Russians don't. I mean, who's going to go into Syria? So those poor innocent people who are still forced to live there. I mean, it's catastrophic.
And any financial aid, any financial aid going into Syria as well.
There's no financial aid going into Syria.
Can you trust it's not going to be diverted to Assad's war effort?
Well, you have that same question with Erdogan, right? I mean, Turkey is not exactly, on the bellwether cliff of being the best folks either. I mean, they've got lots of problems. They have lots of religious problems. It's their government is not necessarily respected. There's lots of hanky panky that's going on there too. It's not as if that's going to go in. Where the EU, I think they said they were going to put 4 million euros in there. I mean, that's for putting up tents. That's for getting clean water. That's for getting some sort of electricity. Don't forget, the infrastructure sucks. And now that they've had this earthquake, nothing's going. No gas, no electricity. I mean, it's devastating. I mean, it's exactly the same circumstance that the Ukraine is in. The only difference is they're not being bombed by the Russians.
Yeah.
I mean, and the Russians now they've just started to deploy their troops, and they're starting to do another surge. And now the Ukrainian government is asking for aircraft to defend themselves. So basically what that's going to end up being, it's going to be a proxy war for everybody in the world is going to be supplying the Ukraine with missiles and tanks and jets and bombs and all the rest of that. Oh, no, we're not at war, but the Ukrainians are doing it. So it's kind of like, I mean, that's a whole other ball of wax. I mean, it's getting, do it or get off the pot. I mean, what are you going to do? Are the sanctions working to castrate Russia? Somehow it doesn't seem to, because he seems to still be able to be doing them. The only bright thing is that the dependency on Russian oil in Europe has been eliminated. So Europe has had to take a hard pill to do that. So that if there's any bright spot, any glimmer of a bright spot, at least that has been accomplished. But again, that's another one of those conflicts where it's just absolutely catastrophic. Innocent people having their houses and places bombed because of indiscriminate mortar attacks and missile.
we're going to have to leave it there, mate. So all the best to Canada, and we'll chime back in next week.
All the best to Australia. Thank you, Michael, and thank you to the Informer for this opportunity.